Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah, like Corey said. And first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me tonight. I'm here with my friend Chai. She also works on the ship. And we just are really stoked to be here tonight and really honored that you'd have us. So thank you for that. So I'm just going to share a little bit about just YWAM Ships and what we do and just kind of what our heart is for the Pacific and all of that. So as Corey mentioned, our ship, we have one ship at the moment and the name is the YWAM Koha. So for those of you that don't know, koha is a te reo Maori word meaning gift. And the reason that we call this ship gift is because basically what YWAM Ships does is we take medical care, so doctors and nurses and dentists and education and the gospel, and we bring it to isolated Pacific islands. So as we probably some of us know, there's thousands of islands throughout the Pacific that are not able to be easily accessed by airplanes or cruise ships and things like that. They're quite isolated and they're quite hard to get to in places like Papua New Guinea or the Solomon Islands, Fiji, Samoa, Vanuatu. There's many, many islands where thousands of people live, and they're often either unnoticed or unknown. They're not really, the rest of the world isn't really aware of them a lot of times. I come from America where the Pacific Islands aren't really talked about that much. And so when I moved to New Zealand, they were, it's our neighbors here and they're our neighboring nations. And so one of the things that YWAM Ships does is we are seeking to empower a healthy future for the Pacific. So bringing doctors, dentists, nurses, missionaries, teachers, educators to the islands and giving free, mostly free healthcare and dental care with sharing the gospel as much as we possibly can as well. And just giving empowerment throughout the Pacific as much as we can through that. And so the way we've been doing that is with the YWAM Koha. So the YWAM Koha is called the gift because 2 years ago, the ship was not even on our radar. YWAM has a couple of bases all over New Zealand. For those that don't know, YWAM is a mission sending organization with young people, youth with a mission is what it's called. And so we have some bases all over New Zealand. And our base in Tauranga there was a man who owned a ship who was not in any way Christian or religious, owns a shipping company in Tauranga called Stony Creek Shipping. This man's name is Nigel. And so he owned the ship called the Claymore too. And it was just an old shipping that he would use it for cargo and things like that. And he would take it to Pitcairn Island. And so he would take the ship to Pitcairn Island a couple of times a year and bring cargo and passengers. And then, so the ship is about 50 years old. And so he had a contract with the British government to go to Pitcairn Island. After the contract ran out, the ship was going to be put up for sale. And so this man, Nigel, was thinking of selling the ship. And so he thought, he listed the ship, and there wasn't a huge market for that kind of ship at the time. And so no one looked to buy it. So he thought he would take it apart and scrap it and sell the parts of the ship. And so he estimated that he could have made over $1.5 million from the parts of the ship because it's very well built. And his lawyer, actually, who is a friend of YWAM, kind of said, hey, what do you think about donating your $1.5 million ship to a nonprofit, a Christian nonprofit that does medical care? And, he wasn't super a fan of the idea at first, and then kind of came around and actually ended up donating the ship for free to YWAM, along with thousands of dollars of gifts on top of that. And it was just a huge and unexpected blessing for YWAM New Zealand. And so we gratefully accepted the ship. And so we thought to rename her. And the only way that we could really tell the story of the ship was calling it a gift. And so we renamed the ship the YWAM Koha, not just because it was a gift to us, but our heart and our prayer is that it would be sort of the gift from the Church of New Zealand and the people of New Zealand to the Pacific. And so that's really our heart. And so for the last 2 years, because of COVID, unfortunately, we haven't been able to go to the Pacific Islands. We've been trying every year every few months since COVID hit. And it's a bit tricky to go to the islands right now, as I'm sure we all know. And so we are just spending the time in Tauranga, where we are based, just fixing up the ship in every way possible and just getting her really solidly ready to deploy when that time comes. So ideally, we're looking at going sort of next year, maybe mid-April is kind of the dream. And we're looking at possibly going to Fiji and Vanuatu next year. And so, yeah, we're really, really excited about that. Our organization is 100% volunteer. So all of the people that work on the ship are volunteer, and we love doing that because then all of the donations and proceeds that we get go straight to the islands and straight to the mission and furthering God's kingdom. So that's the way that we like to run it. And so because of that kind of being stuck in the country, we have just really begun to just seek the Lord and just go, okay, God, what would you have for this time? And what is it really that you want from this mission? And so through a lot of prayer and connections and different things, we have been running our first dental clinic actually in New Zealand, because we thought, well, if we're going to be stuck in the country, we might as well use the resources that we have. And so we've been running a free dental clinic out of the Bay of Plenty, just going around with some equipment and containers that we have and offering free dental care to at-risk and low-income families. And just the feedback from that has been amazing. We've just had so many opportunities to pray with people and just to love on them. And you find that, especially with dental care, it's a really kind of, in a lot of parts of New Zealand and the Pacific, it's not well known. And, oral health and health in general sometimes is not really well known or talked about or kind of communicated about. And so we've just found so many people who are just like, oh, I don't know you're supposed to brush your teeth, or I didn't know that going to the, I've never been to the dentist before, just having all tons of problems and tons of issues and just things that are very, very expensive to get fixed. And so we've actually been able to go with volunteers and just fix them completely for free. So in the last 4 weeks of our first program, we have estimated we've given or donated over $35,000 worth of dental services, just by the rates of today's, what it costs to go to the dentist. And so it's been really, really amazing. And just watching people's lives get transformed by that, but more than just the work, it's just by just the way that we are just trying to love these people and give them God's love and just to give them a little piece of Jesus, even in the practical services that we offer. And so I think one of the things that is really, really deep on our hearts as a mission is just the story of, Jesus leaving the 99 sheep to go find the one sheep. And it's the same for us in the Pacific Islands, just that there are those islands that are the one island, the one community that would be overlooked by the rest of the world. And our heart is really to go and to make them feel seen and to give them the love of God. And so that's what we're totally about. And so while we're in New Zealand, we're going to keep offering our services wherever we can for free. And then as soon as we're able to go, we're going. So we'll be going to the islands and offering health and primary health and dental care and sharing Jesus and education and all of that good stuff. And so, yeah, it's just been incredible to watch the way the Lord has kind of moved in the last 2 years and just brought us to this place we are now with a ship. We got a ship for free, and now we're being able to use that to bless so many people just and love on them. And so, yeah, it's been an incredible 2 years, and we're looking forward to many more years. And I loved just the fact that I'm even able to share tonight with all of you, because I think the thing is we are based in Tauranga, and we talk about it sometimes as Tauranga ship, but recently we've kind of broadened the narrative to, we want the ship to be the ship that is from New Zealand, given, as a gift to the Pacific. And it doesn't belong to YWAM, and it doesn't belong to one city. It's actually a gift from the nation of New Zealand, or, just from the believers in the body of Christ. And so we're just very passionate about making that, that every person who would pray or would give in any way has a part of it. And it's when we take it to the islands, we're saying this is from your New Zealand family, and this is from your family all across New Zealand and all across the world as well. And so, yeah, that's just a little bit of our heart and what we're planning to do. And yeah, that's a little bit from us. Yeah, so the way that our outreaches generally work is the ship will be in the islands for 6 months, 3 to 6 months, depending on the weather and things like that. So for instance, if we sail to Fiji for 3 months or 6 months, we'll be there. And then without COVID, so this isn't a world without COVID, the volunteers, so doctors, nurses, just general volunteers, we really take anyone, photographers, IT people. They fly to the biggest island in, say, Fiji. We pick them up, and then they would do maybe 2 or 3 weeks with us. There's no time limit. So a volunteer could stay for 1 week. They could stay for the whole 3 to 6 months. But we've set it up in a way so that you're someone who works, or you have a family, or, you're a nurse or something, and you can only get 2 weeks off. Then you fly in, we pick you up, you stay on the ship, and then we take you back to the airport after we do an outreach. And so we kind of run them in chunks, but the ship will stay for 6 months in the islands. So that way we can do a lot of work, but people have the flexibility to come how they are able to, if that makes sense. Yeah. Good question. So at one time we can take about 33. We're doing some renovations on the ship to build it up to 40. So 1/3 of those will be the crew, 1/3 will be the doctors and nurses, and 1/3 will be the general volunteers, assistants, and missionaries and things like that. But like I said, so then because people are rotating, we can get 100 people in one outreach at different times. But at one time, we had have about 30 to 40. Yeah. Depends on kind of the tides and the weather. So we have these containers that we've built. It's just like a shipping container, but we've put the dental clinics inside of them. So that way we have a crane on our ship. So essentially you could pull up to an island and you could crane the container onto the island, power it up with a generator and do all of the work on the island. Normally we do about half and half. So we'll do sort of a triage and primary health care and community engagement, kids programs on the island. And then we'll have a little water taxi boat type deal to take people, ferry them back and forth so that they get their more massive sort of dental surgeries and more intense care on the ship. The only exception is if the water's rocky, we won't do anything on the ship just because you need, you want a steady hand for that. So for say a specific sail, we have 2 engineers that are full time. They live on board. We've got 2 cooks. We've got an assortment of hospitality and office workers, and then we have sort of captains and first mates that we can call on if we need. We don't have any full time skipper or first mate. We just have them kind of on call if they're available. But the ones that we really need is a full time captain who can just kind of be there for most of the time. And then we need some more, so deckhands, so people to do the ropes and things like that. We have a couple, but the one we really have the biggest need for is captains, just because they often work. And so it's hard to get their schedules to line up with ours. So I would say for the most part, we have most of them. But then when it comes down to actually needing to do a sail, it's hard to kind of pin them down a bit because their schedules are quite flexible. So yeah. But we're always looking for more as well. Welders, painters, people just to help out. And, we have people who come once a week and clean toilets. We have people who stay full time and work in the engine room, just anything in between we can use. So yeah, we're always looking for more. YWAM Ships is the one branch of YWAM where you don't need to do a training school or anything. We have some volunteers that aren't even Christian. So we have actually one really cool guy. So I don't know, probably a lot of you have heard of Smith Wigglesworth, the evangelist, who came and, sort of pioneered is it the Pentecostal church, I think, in New Zealand. So we actually have his great grandson who comes and does electrical work on the ship once a week, but he's not a Christian in the least. So he has nothing to, he's not a YWAMer, not a Christian, but he just randomly turned up one day and said, "Hey, I'm an electrician, marine electrician. I'm going to help you guys out." And so he comes once a week. He stays the night and he just does a bunch of work for us for free. Not a Christian at all, but he comes and, we're always kind of like, "Hey, you know who your great grandfather is, right? Like it's in your blood, it's in your legacy." But yeah, so yeah, we just take anyone, but that's one of my favorites is just God draws the most interesting people. Yeah, that's one of our favorite things to do is sometimes we do groups from schools or churches or mission or just kids who want to get involved, young people will just come down, and sometimes they do one day a week or they'll just do maybe a couple of days. And yeah, we love having anyone help, but we really love helping young people kind of learn some skills. So we have them come, and sometimes a class will come down and we'll teach them about the engine room, and they can help out. They can pitch in painting some pipes and learning some things. And yeah, that's something we love to do, is just bring people down and show them what we're doing. Yeah. It is our home port, yes. So when we're not sailing in the islands, that is our home port. Occasionally we'll do a tour around New Zealand. So we actually just got back last month from a little tour we did around New Zealand. So we went down to Littleton, Christchurch, Nelson, Wanganui, and Wellington. And we just spent a couple of months doing some public tours. So the ship was open for people to look. We did some different events and things. But for the most part, we are berthed in Tauranga. Yeah. And then ideally without COVID, we'd be in Tauranga for 6 months, then the islands for 6 months every year. That's a discount, but it is quite expensive. We're in the private part of the port, so I'm trying to remember. They've changed the price on us, but I think it was at one point it was I know in other ports it's around $400 a day to berth there. That's at half price, and so they give us a deal. I think it's a couple. It's probably about 250 a day to be where we are. So that adds up. But yeah, could be so much more. They definitely give us a discount, so that's nice. Yeah. As long as they are, we'd like them to be, I mean, on the younger side, over 18 or over 16, or have parental consent, and then we don't have any cap on it. So our oldest volunteer that lives on the ship is about to turn 70. He's our resident grandpa, and he is one of our cooks. So we take anyone. We have, our chief engineer is in his 60s, Smith Wigglesworth's great grandson in his 50s, down to our youngest volunteer is 7, part of a family.